those are about sort of 4 or 5 ideas I've got of helping boost cash flow. But generally speaking, finding the right clients that pay you on time is a really good little strategy as well, right?
Yeah, definitely, because there's always those clients that don't, and everybody has had those, unfortunately. What stops a business owner from scaling their business and making it work without them?
I would say fear of failure, maybe. Not having the right guidance, not having the right support around them. Maybe it's a self-limiting belief based on the fact they've never known anyone to do it. So just out of interest, how many episodes have you put together so far?
We're up to about 160 now.
Yeah, and I'm sure if I went back and listened to every single one of those, I'd take a piece of advice from every single one.
You mean you haven't already before doing this?
I'll be honest with you, I haven't listened to 160, only 159.
Okay, that's fine. I'll let you off with that one then.
Absolutely, perfect.
This week on the Engaging Marketeer podcast, I am speaking with Phil Chantry, who has not only grown, scaled, and sold a business, he's grown, scaled, and sold a business twice. He is now a coach with ActionCOACH, and he teaches other business owners how to grow, scale, and potentially sell their business. So I'm going to be finding out from Phil how he does that, how he helps his clients, the kind of clients that he works with, and what advice he has for business owners that want to grow, scale, and exit their business. So Phil, you're obviously your position, your career, your job is in helping businesses and helping them grow, helping them to scale, and helping them to run without the business owner. Could you say the kind of businesses that you like to help and the sort of problems that they come to you with?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when I first started coaching 8 years ago, I went out to people and I said, look, I can help you create a business that can work without you. And I was met with a stony silence, because most people don't feel as though that's even achievable, because maybe they don't know anyone that's done that. So it's pretty difficult to focus on that end goal. So usually people want one of 3 things. They want to make more money, they want to get better results from their time, or they want to get better results from their team. So those tend to be the 3 main areas that I'm focusing on. I just had a client that I jumped off a session with, and his challenge is he's trying to get better results from his team and his time at the moment. The money side's pretty good, but he knows that if he can get better results from his team and his time, then obviously a lot more money will flow. And maybe creating a business that can work without him is on his list at some stage. So in terms of the types of companies I work with, I would say 2/3 of them are trades businesses. I don't specifically go out there to attract trades businesses. A lot of those people are interested in growing their team. Maybe they've got a successful business already, but they're not in control of their numbers, and they are not in control of they don't know what marketing is even. So, a company like yours might be able to help some of these clients if they've got an interest in digital marketing, or they feel that having a digital presence could actually help them get them from A to B. And then a lot of them struggle with sales as well, Darren. So they're not really clear on what to do with these quality leads once they come through. How can we actually present ourselves in our best light to get better results from the leads that we're actually bringing in? So in a nutshell, hopefully that's a rough and ready answer for you.
You mentioned helping people have their businesses work without them. That's a concept that some people, when they start in business, will think, how the hell is that going to work? How can my business work without me? I am the business. There's no way it could work without me. I wouldn't want it to work without me. Why is that important?
Well, for me, if you run a business where it's wholly reliant on you, you've kind of just bought yourself a job. It's not really a business, in my opinion. A business is a commercial, profitable enterprise that could work without you one day. So if you want to buy yourself a job, if it's a lifestyle thing, then that's absolutely fine. So there are people out there that are happy to run a business in that manner. But if they want to get to a stage whereby they're not having to answer calls when they're on holiday and answer emails, where they're actually able to go on holidays that they want to go on, for example, not work weekends, and do the things they enjoy doing at work, Darren. So too many people, I find, do the stuff they don't necessarily want to do rather than hiring people to do that for them. The reason they can't do that is not because they don't want to necessarily. They might not know how to. They might not be able to afford it. They might not have the money coming in. So my thinking is, okay, so if we could generate some more cash flow into the business, and then systemize the business so it could work without the business owner, then why not? Why couldn't the business owner start to reduce their hours down at the very least, and maybe do things outside the business that they want to get involved in? Some people want to start a new business, right? Some people want to go in a totally different area. I've worked with a chiropractic before that's now launched his own Instagram business, which has got nothing to do with what he does. He's now able to step away from his business a bit more to enable him to do the stuff that he really enjoys doing, and also make some more money in the process. So that's my answer to you on that one.
You mentioned you work a lot with trades.
Yeah.
I said at the beginning, we don't have a huge number of trades that we personally work with. And I think the reason that is, a lot of trades struggle with growth in their business because there's an inbuilt concern that if they take someone on and they train them to do what they do, say a joiner, for example, that joiner is then going to learn everything from them, leave and set up in competition. How do you get over that issue with your clients?
Good question. So often people will, firstly, if you've got people that want to progress and grow within their career, you will lose some of them that will start their own business. But my thinking is that if the business owner has a relationship with the end user clients, if they're the larger clients they've got anyway, then they don't necessarily have to be the one that does the work, but they do need to be the one that actually has that relationship. For me, there are two reasons. There's two main ways of keeping clients and also getting referrals, and it's building the relationship and getting great results. So if you've got a person working for you that's got all of the relationship with your client and they're responsible solely for getting the great results that your client's getting, then that could absolutely happen. So from my point of view, it's keeping that relationship with your clients, as long as they're the larger ones, or at least moving the relationships around the company. So you haven't necessarily got any relationships, but you've got 6 or 7 or 8 people with relationships with clients, then you're not going to lose everything all in one go. You can also get them to sign non-compete agreements, of course, that some people would say they're not worth the paper they're written on, but that definitely serves as a deterrent to people to actually go off and pinch clients and start afresh with them instead of you.
Yeah, I was going to say that because there is this thing that you can't prevent somebody from earning a living. No. And if they're a joiner and you're a joiner and you've set the non-compete on it, you can't stop them being a joiner.
No, absolutely you can't. Absolutely. There's certain things that you can put in place that I've seen work quite well in terms of not restricting, that's the wrong word, but I suppose reducing the risk of that happening, shall we say. And I've not had a single client in the last 7 years where someone has actually run off and taken their business.
So if we're sticking with the analogy with trades, one of the problems that trades have, and I've seen this with companies over the years, is that if they try to grow their business and they take on staff, maybe they get 3 or 4 people out on the tools doing the job for them, their job essentially becomes lead generation and client liaison and working on contracts. If they hit a dry patch, which can happen, especially through the pandemic that we had, they then have the problem of paying the staff that they've got and potentially letting them go or not getting paid themselves or taking reserves out of the business. How do you help businesses get over that hurdle of basically keeping their employees fed?
Absolutely, really good question. So obviously there are things that are going to come up that we can't foresee, like pandemics and what have you. My thinking is really making sure that a percentage of your team are subcontractors. So at least if you're not getting the business through, you're not paying subcontractors to do the work. That can present another problem though, because you could say, well, actually subcontractors could pick you up and drop you at a moment's notice. So I've got a few clients at the moment that have got what they call permanent subcontractors. So people that will pretty much know that they're going to be working for them the next week, the next month, the next year. But ultimately they're not tied in terms of staff salaries, PAYE, NIC contributions, and that type of thing. So for me, it's about getting the balance right of paid labour and subcontracted labour. For me, if the business is going through a lean spell, you want everyone to be busy still, right? But obviously when the peaks happen, it's impossible to recruit and train people up at the rate you need to. So you need a healthy number of subcontractors. And for me, it's about helping people just create a list of subcontractors or a list of people that they know that they could pull in quickly. If you lose someone as a boss of a company, you don't want to be tearing your hair out overnight or you're going to look like me. So the most important thing to do is to have a list to go to. So, okay, terrible that our key employee is left. However, I have got a list of 30 people to phone around, and most people don't have that. So that's what I would recommend in that situation.
Yeah, and I've seen exactly what you said as well, particularly in the kitchens industry, because there is a dearth of kitchen fitters, of joiners specifically, that can do the work. There's a big lack in the UK at the moment of skilled trades that want to do this. How do you help businesses get over that problem? And what do you think the reason is, the fact that there is a big gap in skills in the UK in quality workmanship at the moment?
I think there's been, the word apprenticeships is becoming less of a big deal than it used to be sort of 20, 30 years ago. I think that there is a bit of undeniably a bit of this sort of entitled generation coming through that want everything, that's not prepared to necessarily work for it. I wouldn't necessarily target that to everybody, but I think that I have seen examples of that coming through where people struggle with younger people. But you can also flip that round. You know, my job isn't just to take the side of the business owner, although they're my client. My job is to help people make logical decisions about their business. So, you know, if a client comes in and says, I've got this youngster working for me, he's a 1-year qualified electrician, he's not really doing what he's meant to do, I'm thinking of getting rid of him, what do you think I should do, Phil? My job isn't to give an answer based on that one question, it's to find out what the problem is there. Have we recruited the wrong person? Have we trained them and onboarded them correctly? Are we holding them to account correctly? Have we got systems in place that give them the best opportunities to succeed? And my job is really to help people make the right logical decision. And after I've asked a few questions, often I have the business owner, pointing the finger back at themselves to say, perhaps it was me. Perhaps we haven't trained them up properly. We've chucked them in at the deep end, expected them to succeed. And really, what could we expect? What were we expecting, really? So actually, it's a case of making sure that we are giving people in our team the right opportunities to do the job properly. Also, a lot of people talk about attracting the right staff and attracting the right number of staff. But for me, it's about retaining the right people as well. So what are we doing to retain the best people? Are we looking after them? Have they got career progression? Do we know where they're heading and how they're going to get there? Are we paying them the right amount of money? Because maybe we've got a warped idea of what day rates should be in the scaffolding business. And maybe our opinion's based on what it was 5 years ago when we worked for somebody else and what we were getting. So the important thing for me is to get super clear on what we're doing for our team as well as what they can do for us, which is where I think there's a bit of an imbalance.
Do you ever get a problem where you're helping a client like that and you know the issue is the business leader, is the way they recruit staff or the way they motivate staff or micromanage? Do you ever get a problem with them admitting that they're the issue?
Generally speaking, I don't actually have that much of a problem with them admitting they're the issue. I remember asking a kitchen fitter, funnily enough, about 4 years ago.
It's always the kitchen fitters, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. He had a decent sized business. He had sort of 30, 40 staff. And I said, give yourself a score out of 10. I'm going to call him Dave because that's the name I use for everyone that I want to remain anonymous. So Dave, give me a score out of 10 on man management. What do you like at man management, Dave? And he said, I'd give myself a 1 out of 10. I said, okay, so 1 being low, yeah? He said, yeah. And I said, okay, so what do we need to do to get that from a 1 to a 2? So really, it's not about trying to create the best man manager in the world very, very quickly. It's about getting them to have some sort of self-awareness so they know really what they're doing, what they're good at, what they're not good at, and giving them the opportunity to develop, really. And maybe they're just not the right person to be a man manager. Maybe there's someone else in the business that would make a better man manager. So for me, it's about getting a business working well. I've got another example. I know I'm talking a lot about trades, and one third of my business is not trades businesses, but we'll come on to that. But there's a roofing business where the managing director said, I'm not the right person to manage this company anymore. So I said, okay. He said, but I still want control of the company. He said, I don't want to sell the business. I said, fine, okay. So what do you think? He said, well, maybe if we could find a managing director, we've built the profits up in the business now. It can afford a managing director and still afford to pay me salary and dividends myself. But he found that if he found the right person for his job that can actually do the stuff that he's not particularly great at, and probably in his heart he knows he never will be.
I mean, that's the key, isn't it? Identifying the stuff that you're not good at, or you don't like doing, or takes you a long time to do, or certainly isn't profitable, and find somebody better, quicker, or cheaper, or all three who can do that for you. That's the key to business, really.
Absolutely.
So, what stops somebody from doing this? What stops a business owner from scaling their business and making it work without them?
I would say fear of failure, maybe. Not having the right guidance, not having the right support around them. Maybe it's a self-limiting belief based on the fact they've never known anyone to do it. So you've never known anyone that has scaled a business to work without them. Most people would think, well, that's not really possible. So they're being held back. Whereas you imagine if that same person had 10 friends and all 10 of them had actually scaled the business and either sold it or it could work without them, they're going to believe that it's possible, right? They might believe that it's a struggle, but they're definitely going to believe it's possible. So I think upbringing, your environment, the people you surround yourself with are critical, because someone once said that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And if those people aren't doing so well for themselves, you're probably not going to be able to stretch your belief system to a point whereby you feel that that's possible. So I think that's the real reason why people don't feel it's possible. Plus, they've also not got a plan, Darren. Most people I speak to, if I say, have you got a business plan? 80% of them haven't got one. The 20% that have got one are just numbers that have been plucked out of the air. There's no link back to their personal goals. There's no action plan. Who's going to do what and when? They haven't broken down these goals into smaller, manageable chunks. So again, people tend to be, their businesses are being controlled by the team members. So, for example, you've obviously heard a lot of people say, I'd love to own my own business. It'd be brilliant, wouldn't it? Because you can be your own boss. I'm like, you're never your own boss. You've got clients, they're your bosses. Yeah. You've got team members, and sometimes they're your bosses in a funny sort of way. So often I think that people are allowing their business to run them rather than the other way around. And because they've never done that, they don't believe it's possible. So I think belief is a massive part of it, Darren.
Yeah, you do. I hear people a lot saying, oh, I'd love to run my own business. I'd love to, be my own boss and take time off whenever I want, get up whenever I like, go into work whenever I want, go home whenever I want, take a week off without any thought. It's not like that though, is it? It's not like that at all.
No, absolutely not. It's only when most people start off as the E-Myth is a great book to read for any of your listeners, Darren. It's a great book. It's about the technician. It's about someone who gets good at something, to say I'm good at bookkeeping, or I'm good at roofing, or I'm good at at running a print factory or something like that, but not necessarily running a print factory, printing, for example. But then when you run your own business, it's like, okay, so now I've got to find somewhere to work. I've got to finance the business. I've got to finance the fact I'm probably not going to have any clients in the first few months, and I've got to put food on the table and pay the mortgage. I've also got to recruit. I've never really done that before, and I've never really trained anyone either. And what's marketing? I don't even understand about that. That's just some sort of dark art that I've never really got involved in. And control of the numbers. Well, what numbers do I need to be in control of, and what systems do I need in terms of IT systems, CRM systems, soft systems, checklists? What do I need to put in place? So all of a sudden, they go from a technician who are very, very good at, skilled at what they do, to being like, now I'm running a business. This is not the same job at all. And actually, I haven't got much time to spend on the technician side of it, because I've got to do all this other stuff and I'm having to work crazy hours. So I think that's that's a real wake up call for people that start their own business. Yeah.
From what you've said there, it sounds like you're scaring the hell out of people listening to this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that people that think they can start their own business, the two core areas of business I think you need, if you could strip everything away, all of that stuff I've spoken about, and you've got two things going for you: healthy mindset and a positive cash flow. Literally, as far as I'm concerned, everything else could fall out around your ears, could be a disaster, and you'll be fine. If your mindset isn't strong enough, isn't resilient enough to start a new business or to run an existing business, then maybe you need to look for another solution in life. And let's say you've got a great mindset, but unfortunately you've only got 50p in your bank account, and you've got to pay mortgage at the end of the month. Your mindset probably isn't going to be strong enough to be able to cope with solving that issue really quickly, unless of course you've got a possibility to borrow money or sell assets or something. So for me, a business does need enough money in the bank. So I always say to people, look, you need 3 months balance. You need 3 months overhead in your bank account at any one point in time to have a stable business. Some people would say more, some people might say less, but generally 3 months is a really good rule of thumb. If you've got that, and that's after you've paid some massive corporation tax bill or VAT bill or what have you, if you've got that in your bank, you're doing okay and you're in a really stable position.
So you said positive mindset and to have a stable, positive cash flow. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, $1 million question.
Go on then.
How do you get a positive mindset, and how do you get a positive, stable cash flow?
Okay, 2 questions in one. So, the positive mindset. Firstly, I would say the most important thing really is to surround yourself with people that have also got positive mindsets, because people are very good at dragging other people down. Looking at, there's a great book called The Miracle Morning that I would recommend anyone read that's listening to this. So that's all about, what do you do to look after yourself? So we're talking obviously about health and exercise. We're talking about sleep. We're talking about something that not everyone buys into called self-affirmations. So if you tell yourself the same thing over and over again, the chances are you might believe the bullshit that you're feeding yourself. That's the idea behind it. Doesn't work for everyone. Some people hate all this. Some people call it mumbo jumbo or new age thinking. But I know full well that it works very well the other way around. If you tell yourself a lot of negative ideas, the chances are you're probably going to start to believe that. So why wouldn't it work if you start to feed yourself positive information? And if you're not the best salesperson in the world, getting out of bed and saying I'm the best salesperson in the world 10 times before you put your clothes on probably isn't going to work. But if you told yourself I'm becoming the best salesperson in the area, it might sound a little bit more believable, and it gives you a level of progress. So that's something which I've seen work very well for some people anyway. But generally, health, exercise. I've got a new client I've taken on, a couple of locksmiths, fantastic guys. They get to bed at 8:30 every evening, even though they're not even 30 years old yet, and they stand by that. They say, I want to get up early, get down the gym, and they're on it. When they actually stick to it, whether that's sustainable for a long period of time, when you're married and you've got a family, not sure.
Yeah, but when you've got kids, that ain't happening.
Absolutely. But yeah, I think that is a good book to start reading if you want to develop your mindset. Also looking at, if you've got some positive Google reviews or you've got some positive reviews elsewhere, reading those reviews regularly, taking time to reflect on what's gone well that day, that week, that month, and that year is really, really important. Most people, I find, just when they're looking to grow a business, about what next? They actually hold fire a second. What have you achieved over the last year? What can you look back and be proud of? Because if all we're doing is say what next, and what next, our subconscious mind, pardon my French, is getting a bit pissed off with us. It's not happy because it doesn't understand what we're doing all this for. It doesn't get anything out of it. And if you think, well, actually, we're making more money, that's fine. Yeah, that's part of it. But you also there's also more need for things like recognition, time with your family, things like this, positive stuff that's happened as a result of business growth. So I'd say hopefully there are a few tips there on the mindset side. Is it all right if I crack on with the cash flow stuff?
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's interesting what you said there about the what next, and stop and think about what you've achieved. I had pretty much that exact same conversation the other day with someone who's a counsellor, when I was
Really?
getting a bit stressed about all the stuff that I still had to do in the new house that I've moved into, the things I hadn't done. And they said, look, no, just think about what you have achieved since you bought that house, all the stuff that you've project managed and you've had built and you've had done. Focus on the positive and stop putting yourself down thinking about what you haven't done. So that's exactly what you've just said. It's interesting.
Perfect. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And sometimes I've been guilty myself of falling into that what next mentality. Whereas, I almost think every day, at the end of each day, come up with one thing that you can be proud of that you've done today. Write it down, even just commit it to memory, whatever it is. It definitely helps, especially if you had a bit of a rubbish day, because not every day is perfect, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's good. There's another guy called Dr. Marshall Goldsmith who's written a couple of fantastic books. And one of the things he talks about, I've seen him speak live, he's an American guy. He talks about daily questions. So asking yourself 4 or 5 questions every day and scoring yourself in those areas. So have I done my best today to build meaningful relationships with my clients? Might be an important question that is critical for the success and growth of your business, but you're not asking it yourself often enough. So he says, ask that question every day, and then you might give yourself a score of 3 out of 10. Okay, what can I do tomorrow to change that? So you're constantly stretching yourself and pushing yourself in the right way. So yeah, anything by Dr. Marshall Goldsmith, I would absolutely read. Really, really good stuff there. Even just Google it. Just put Dr. Marshall Goldsmith daily questions, and you're going to find an article on it somewhere that's really going to help you understand how that could work for you.
We'll put some links for that below the podcast so people can click straight on that.
Good. So, shall I move on to cash flow?
Yes, the important one, the cash flow. How do you get a positive and consistent cash flow in your business?
Absolutely. It depends whether you're starting out or whether you've been in business a while. So I spoke to again, a lot of my examples are trades businesses. I don't know why, but they just are. An electrical business earlier, and they were saying that they were disappointed the fact that their invoicing isn't being kept up to date as quickly as it might. And it's pretty obvious, right? If you don't invoice, you're not going to get paid. Yeah. So often your money is sitting in someone else's bank account. So that's one area. Another area also relating to debt, I suppose, is debt prevention. So we've all heard of debt collection. We're not necessarily brilliant at it. We don't necessarily ramp up the sort of the levels when someone's not paying us, they're ignoring us. And I have had people speak to us when they're a year down the line, they're owed £50,000, still haven't been paid, and they're not doing anything about it, or apart from sending the same emails over and over again, which clearly isn't working. But I want to talk to you about debt prevention. So what can we do when we sign up a client in the initial stages? So once we've agreed a fee and a scope for the work that we're doing for that client, to say to them, look, once we actually start working together, obviously we're going to need paying. Is it okay if I explain to you how our payment terms work? You explain that to them, and then they say yes or no. Most people say, yeah, no problem. And they will just do what they want to do. They'll pay you late if they want to pay you late. That's up to them. So what we then do is say to them, okay, is it okay then, Darren, if I explain to you, if we go a day over the 30 days we've just agreed, is it okay if I explain what happens? And you're like, yeah. I say, okay, so what we're going to do firstly is a day over. Unfortunately, we won't be able to offer you 30 days credit on your next order. So it's going to go down to 14 days. Is that okay? Now, if you say at that point, Darren, what? If I go a day over, that's a problem. I'm like, well, yeah, those are our terms. Okay. So what do you think is reasonable, Darren? Well, I think 40 days would be reasonable just to give us a bit of leeway. Now it's up to you as the supplier whether you want to agree to those payment terms, but at least that's crystal clear. So every client will leave that sales meeting not just having signed the contract, but will know what the payment terms are and what the conditions are if you go over those payment terms when you're starting getting debt collection letters. Mysteriously, I found that our old business, we started to use this. 80% of our backlog of aged debt was cleared within 2 months of starting this, just because people were super clear. We had penalties and we were going to follow through. and it was all agreed up front. So it was nothing nasty that they weren't aware of. It wasn't buried deep in T's and C's. It was up front. So I'd say that's one thing that you can do to stop yourself getting debt. Obviously, having a bank overdraft organised in case you need it. Factoring, where is something where you can ask a factoring company to pay you immediately, but you do sacrifice some profit there. So be very careful with that. Making sure that how else could I put this? A lot of businesses in this country do run off debt. So make sure that if you're going to take on debt, you know where to get it from. You've got debt agreed in principle. Drawdown debt is very good, whereby you could have the facility to 50,000, for example, but you just pay interest on the debt you draw down. But you do need to factor that into a cash flow forecast, so you know that you can actually pay that off. And that's something I help clients with as well, cash flow forecasting too. So those are about sort of 4 or 5 ideas I've got of helping boost cash flow. But generally speaking, finding the right clients that pay you on time is a really good little strategy as well, right?
Yeah, definitely, because there's always those clients that don't, and everybody has had those, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can think of one networking guy I know who asked recently, how do you get someone to pay their bill? They've been dodging me for about 6 weeks and they've not done it. But he's so nice and he's so timid that he won't chase them hard. It's just, maybe it's an oversight on their part. Maybe they didn't mean to. Yeah,
I've seen that, and often if you're that sort of timid person that's no good at it, give it to someone else that works for you that's better at it than you are. I know people that use credit control companies that they'll just bung it to a credit control company who will chase the debt down for them, and will just follow a process, which is what it's about. It's not letting your emotions get in the way of good business.
Yeah, and then if they add interest on top of that, as that's part of terms and conditions, it's out of your hands. You're not the one doing it. You're not the bad guy.
No, absolutely.
It's just what happens.
Yeah, I don't tend to have debt collection conversations with clients during coaching sessions, but I'm more than happy to separate myself and then maybe a day later drop them a quick email and follow them up on something. So, yeah.
One of the things you mentioned several moments ago was about surrounding yourself with the right people. Because you said, was the old adage, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Most people aren't business owners. They are employees or often unemployed. So if you're hanging around with your mates down the pub, they're not going to understand the challenges that you face. They're not going to understand what it means to go out and win business and pay employees and have to pay staff and have to pay tax and have to pay the VAT man and all the various things. How do you find those people to hang around with who do understand your problems? And should you be ditching your mates?
That's a really good question. I had someone fire that one at me about 6 months ago, actually. And I would say, just thinking if it was me, because it's very easy for me to palm out advice onto people when it's not actually me. I haven't got, I suppose, any friends that I would say are holding me back. But if I did, I like to think I would pick and choose the advice they gave me. If they were putting me in a constant negative mindset, I do think you should release them into the wild, shall we say? But
let them go fail somewhere else. In other words,
exactly. If they're bringing you down, that's different. But if they're not necessarily making your life a misery, but they're good fun to hang out with, I would say go for it. But just be aware of who you're listening to for advice. Are you listening to someone that's qualified to dish out advice? So often within coaching sessions, I would probe and ask questions. So if someone says, what do you think I should do with this challenge? I'll ask a lot of questions first to help them come to a logical conclusion themselves. I probably will throw my 2 pence in as well at some stage. But what your friend down the pub will probably do will just give you some very, very quick fire advice. So I'd get rid of him if I were you, because he sounds like he's a waster. And that's not very helpful, because that person doesn't know your business. So I would say be very careful. If it's just about listening to people for advice, I would say that's important. So just pick and choose the advice you listen to. And then when you're looking to surround yourself with positive-minded people that are going to help you, joining networking groups like BNI obviously could be a good way forward. Again, you might not resonate with everybody that is part of your group, but at least you've got a possibility to meet like-minded people that are looking to grow their business. And there are a lot of great ideas shared at organisations like BNI. Business Junction's another one. There are a lot of networking groups out there. They're not all going to be right for you, maybe networking's not right for you at all. But I would absolutely say to anyone that's not done a day's networking in their life, but doesn't believe in it, thinks it's all a scam, whatever, has got preconceived ideas that it's not going to work, give it a go. Most networking organizations will let people try before they buy, and you might be surprised. I know a lot of people that have joined networking organizations because it wasn't what they expected, and when they came along to visit, they're like, oh, okay, I can see how this can really help me now. So I would say that would be one thing to do. Also ask around when you're if you've got a healthy relationship with competitors or with suppliers, ask them where they actually meet people, who do they hang out with, and maybe there are trade shows and industry events that you could attend where you're rubbing shoulders with the right people. Also, it's not just about people offline, friends that you might meet out for a drink or go networking with. It's who are you listening to online? What podcasts are you listening to? Something like yours, Darren. I'm sure that just out of interest, how many episodes have you put together so far?
We're up to about 160 now.
Yeah, ish. And I'm sure if I went back and listened to every single one of those, I'd take a piece of advice from every single one.
You mean you haven't already before doing this?
I'll be honest with you, I haven't listened to 106, only 159.
Okay, that's fine. I'll let you off with that one then.
Absolutely, perfect. So for me, it's listening to podcasts of people that are sharing advice, because if all you're doing is a great example. There was someone that I was really poking a while ago to try to get a reaction out of them, to get them to change their ways. And it was an accountant. It wasn't a tradesperson. And I suggested an idea to them. And they said, what you don't understand, Phil, is I've been in this business 47 years. I've got 47 years experience of accountancy. I said, brilliant. I said, but I don't think you've got 47 years of experience. So what are you talking about? And I said, I think you've got 1 day's experience. And he looked at me. I said, what the hell are you talking about? And I said, I'll tell you why I think you've got 1 day's experience. You've repeated the same day over and over again for the last 47 years. He wasn't happy about that. But eventually he took that on board and said, actually, yeah, well, if I want the business to change, I need to change. So it's surrounding yourself with the right people. And I would say get a coach, obviously, but also looking at, even counselors as well. A lot of my clients have got counseling, not because I'm such a bad coach that they need counseling on top of that, but because they need a different viewpoint about maybe life coaching's an industry that's had a bit of a bad rap sort of 5-6 years ago, but is now people are actually using life coaches to great effect, and it's really helping them. So those are the tips I'd say for surrounding yourself with the right people.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because I've seen so many people repeat the same mistakes over and over again. I've said this phrase already this morning at a networking meeting. It's Einstein's definition of madness. Do the same thing over and over again, expect different results, whether it be with marketing, whether it be with business, whether it be with hiring people. Businesses still do it. They still make them. For networking, you mentioned it's most people join networking for the business, obviously, to get the referrals, to get the increased business. But there's so much more to it than that, isn't it? There's so much more you can actually get out of it rather than just leads and referrals and money in your bank account.
You're right. I think a lot of people need to build self-confidence. So if they're having to get up every week, 2 weeks, whatever it is, and speak in front of a group of, even if they're not necessarily strangers at that point, but like-minded individuals, maybe they're friends, but they've got to be able to pitch their business to people and explain what they do and explain the benefits of working with them, explain who they're looking to meet if it's a referral organization. So they're generating confidence through public speaking, which I think is one of the things you're alluding to. The other thing, I suppose, is again, getting different viewpoints, fresh ideas from different people. And sometimes for me, when I've joined networking organizations in the past, I thought, this isn't really working for me. I'm not really getting the business from it, primarily because I hadn't put the effort in to start off with. That's the real reason. But the other thing is, well, actually, do I enjoy it? And the answer is, well, yeah, I do. Not all of them, but a lot of them I do. And when I've actually come back from networking, maybe I've had a bad day the previous day. It's not gone particularly well. I've not been particularly happy. but I come back from the networking with a spring in my step if it's a breakfast meeting. You think, right, well, there's something there. There's something that's going on there. And it might just be I've just had a laugh with a couple of people there. And you might say, well, that's not business related, Phil. That's something totally different, right? That's friendships. That should be nothing to do with business. Well, but why can't you be friends with people around, around a breakfast table, for example? What's the problem there? Because people do business with people they know, like, and trust, as we've heard before.
Yeah. So what do you say to those people then? Because I mean, I've heard this. I'm sure you've heard it as well. When you're talking to them about a networking event, whether it's BNI or whether it's something else, and they say, no, that's a scam. That's a cult. That's a waste of money. It's not for me. What do you say to that kind of response?
Yeah, well, I think that there are lots of networking organisations out there. Some are fantastic, some are less than fantastic. But I would always say to people, test and measure. I used to, one thing I didn't mention to you, Darren, I used to run a marketing agency myself. It wasn't a digital marketing agency like you run. It was an offline. So we did a lot of direct mail and email marketing principally. And our main mantra in that business was test and measure. Test some ideas out as you're doing digital marketing, test some ideas out, hopefully test them as cheaply as we possibly can. We still need to get meaningful results, so we don't want to be too penny pinching, but we want to test small and then roll out big if it works. So my thinking is to take that into networking as well and coaching. If we've got an idea, let's test it out. And the way I pitch that, I suppose, if I was pitching a networking session, which I've never done, but if I was, I'd say, well, what's the potential downsides of going? It's going to be a couple of hours out of your life. Is it costing you anything? 20 quid or free. So there's no real downside, let's be honest. What's the potential upside? If it does work, what could it do for your business based on what you've heard other people have told you? And often once people see the logical argument to it, which is downside very, very small, potential upside massive, isn't it worth giving it a crack? Because there are lots of opportunities we've got in life to improve ourselves and improve our business. Is it just a case of dipping our toe in the water with some of these ideas? Let's say I give you 10 ideas, Darren, and let's say you're a lot more negative than I know you are. Let's say you say, yeah, that probably won't work, Phil. That probably won't work. That probably won't work. Let's say all of the 10 ideas probably won't work. Yeah. Right, well, what if one of them does? What difference is that going to make to you? And then you start to rationalize things a bit better in your own mind, and you're making less emotional decisions about going networking, and a logical decision, which is, let's give it a go. What have I got to lose?
Yeah.
And let people make your own mind up, because you can't decide whether something is good, bad, indifferent, a scam, call it what you will, without making an informed business decision. You can't make an informed business decision without the information. And if you haven't gone to a meeting, you haven't got the information. So you're making things up in your own mind.
No, that's good advice. There are many people that make these judgments based on what they've heard, what they've read, what other people have said, without actually seeing it for themselves.
Yeah,
and it's crazy for my mind that people do that. In terms of you, obviously there are a lot of people out there who are business coaches.
Yeah,
every networking group has a business coach in them.
Yeah, absolutely.
What makes you different from the others?
Good question. So I would say a couple of things. So I have built and sold 2 businesses before. So I've created 2 businesses that can work without me. It took me many years. The last 2 years I was coached. So I've been a client as well, which is always quite useful because I can put myself in the client's shoes very easily right now. And the second thing is, as long as I'm working with the right person, I'm very careful with who I work with, but we've got a money back guarantee, which basically says, if you put the work in that you agree to in coaching sessions, and you don't at the very least cover the cost of the investment, of coaching, should I say, in the first year, then you can ask for the difference of money back. So essentially, if you've worked with me for a year, Darren, and you've had 0 results, obviously one of us would have called time long before we got to a year anyway. If you get to the end of the year, 0 results, we test and measure everything, then money back in full. The only thing I don't refund people is their time back, but I do refund people if they're not making the money back from coaching. So for me, coaching is something we test and measure. We measure the number of leads you're getting, your conversion rate, the average number of sales transactions per client, the average sales value, and the gross profit margin. And we do that consistently over the year and subsequent years that we're working together. And then if we're not getting the money, if we're not getting the returns from coaching, then the client can pull the plug. So I'd say those are the two main things. Having done it before, built two businesses, I've built and sold, sorry, not bought and sold. And thirdly, offering a money back guarantee as well.
I think that first one you mentioned is the big one for me. There's having done it, having scaled business and sold it, not just once, but twice. That's the key, because there are so many people who call themselves business coaches who've taken a qualification or they've signed up a franchise with somebody and they've not done it themselves. They are working off material. But you've got the lived experience. You've done it twice. You know what it takes to do it. So you can give real world advice to business owners who want to be in the position that you were in and be able to do it for themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So are there any business owners that you've not been able to help? And what were the reasons for that?
Okay, so yeah, there was one. There was a guy that ran a welding supplies company. I started working with him about 2 years ago. Nice guy, and it became apparent that the main business was an established business. That wasn't the part that I was working on. If I was coaching him on that, I felt confident I could have helped him. With the welding supplies business, it became apparent after a short space of time that actually that the way that he wanted to market and sell his product wasn't going to work. Very blinkered. So although I tried to take him out of his own way almost and help him make logical decisions rather than emotional decisions, he was convinced that his methodology would work, and it didn't work. So I ended up calling time on it after 4 months because I was wasting his money and my time, basically. So at that point in time, it was a very niche business that had legs, but it needed an e-commerce platform, and it needed him to invest some serious money with Amazon, I think, to actually have made that work. So although I had a plan for how I saw it working, we were misaligned, and actually it was my mistake. I should have worked that out at the outset. So I was really disappointed with myself that I didn't spot that at the outset. So I wouldn't have an aversion to working with another company that did exactly the same thing again. However, I think what I took from that is I learned the right questions to ask at the outset, and I thought I got that pretty well covered, but I hadn't. So that was one area that I struggled with. I'd say, although I haven't coached anyone in retail environments, I'd say I would also struggle with that as well, if I'm honest, because I think that if you've got a retail outlet that's an independent one store only, they're tied to their location. So you are hamstrung a lot more. I'm not saying that you couldn't be successful if you've got one retail outlet. Of course you can. Plenty of very successful ones. But I like to be able to work with businesses that have got a lot more flexibility than that. So that's probably one area that I'd probably shy away from.
I like what you said there about you should have identified that right at the start. I imagine we've all taken on clients that we had a feeling at the beginning that this might not be the right person for me. But often, usually when you're new in business, sometimes when you're experienced, you take on a client you shouldn't have because you think, well, it's a good client, it's a good brand, it's a good name, it's a good industry, I know I can help them. And then you realize that, yes, you were right at the beginning, you shouldn't have taken them on. How can businesses, particularly in the start, how can they identify when someone is a bad fit for them and they should walk away?
That's a good question. I know what I do from my point of view. I almost create a list of pre-qualification questions that I go through in my own mind or outwardly to them. So just to give you an example of what I would do is I'd say, right, number one, do I get on with the other person? Which I imagine if you've got a day-to-day or week-to-week or fortnight-to-fortnight contact with your client, that should be really important. Because if you don't get on with them, the chances are problems are going to come up. The second one, and this would apply to everyone as well, I'm assuming, I need to feel that I can help my clients get to where they want to get to quicker than doing it themselves. Because if I can't, then there's probably, if they're not convinced of the value, then again, they're not going to be a good fit either. And the third one is probably unique to me more is are they coachable? Are they the type of people that say they're going to do what they're going to do? So I I take people through a sort of 4 or 5 stage process before I even start working with them to help me answer those 3 questions and to help them answer the questions as well. So if they know, I think from a broader perspective, forgetting about business coaching, your clients, your prospects need to be really, really, really clear on what you're giving them. If you're selling them a widget or you're selling them a pair of shoes, pretty clear. It's not that complicated. But if you're working in, especially, I would say in B2B areas. So I've had some experience with other marketing agencies, with accountancy practices, branding agencies and people like that as well. SEO agencies I've worked with quite a bit too. They're sort of, I used the word dark arts earlier. Maybe they're areas that people don't really know what they're buying into. So those people, if they're really clear at the outset exactly what they're getting for their money and their time and their investment, they're more likely to not just sign up with you, but they're more likely to stick with you as well, because they're probably going to be able to identify themselves as your perfect client or a great client for you. But if they find out something that's not right, you're not a good fit, they're better off deselecting themselves or you deselecting them. So I'd say getting very clear at the outset. I run a session with all my clients when I start, after I've signed them up, and we call it a positioning session. We just spend half an hour together going through, right, what can you expect from me and what can I expect from you? How can I get the best out of you as a business coach? What do I need to look out for? Are you happy to be called out on certain things that you believe in when I don't believe they're true? So we get very clear on the relationship at the outset. So I coach everyone differently. And I think where you've got a set of clients, you know as well as I do, you've got clients, you've been in business, they've been in business in a while, so have you. You need to adapt the way you communicate with people to be able to get the best results, whether you're a coach or not.
Yeah. No, that's a really good tip, actually. The way you communicate, you want to communicate with the way that person likes to communicate. If they're your client, respond to them on how they want to communicate. If people phone me, I ain't answering the phone. I'm going to look at it, the phone's going to be ringing, and I'm going to think, there's no possible way for me to know who that is. And that's it. And so it's WhatsApp, it's email, or it's text. That's it. Any other communication, I'm not interested. This has been enlightening. This has been fascinating. We are pretty much out of time. But as you've just touched on the kind of clients that you want, the kind of clients that you like to work with, and how you route those clients out, anyone listening to this thinking, I love the sound of this, I want to get in touch, I want to find out more about you, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Okay, so behind me you've got my bump. So email me at Philip Chantry at ActionCOACH.com. So 1 L in Philip, PhilipChantry, ActionCOACH.com. That's the best way they can reach me. They can certainly call me on my mobile, which is the number above, and myself or one of my colleagues will pick that up. And I'm happy to book in and have a half an hour conversation with anyone. Really, that initial call is a fact-find call for me to find out as much as possible about their business. And then if we then both see the benefit, I've got a couple of options for them, either gifting them a coaching session or alternatively inviting them along to a quarterly event I run in central London for 60 business owners to help them grow their business. So I've usually got an opportunity for either of them, but it would just be a fact-find call initially.
Okay. Thank you very much, Phil. I will put the links for that below the podcast as well. So anybody who wants to take Phil up on that, just click on that and go straight through and take the action from the Action Coach. Phil, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much. Take care, Darren, and thanks very much for the opportunity.
Thanks.